Joe. Absolutely right. I mean, look, end of the day, basic and core infrastructure and transportation is core infrastructure is critical for economic growth. We also need to recognize that India today is the largest market for railway. We have the budgetary estimates, not just in India, but the steps that the Indian government has taken to develop in-house capabilities, including manufacturing capabilities, are immense. So this announcement to me is not just important from a geopolitical perspective, but from an Indian economy perspective as well, because I think we're going to play a major role in this development. If I can just go back and talk about a couple of other things which to me are very significant, besides obviously the headline of the declaration that we achieved, the fact that we have a consensus, we have become the voice of Global South. I just want to pick up 3 or 4 other points which I believe is reflective of how India's G20 presidency is going to impact the next 5 or 10 years. I want to talk about 3 things in particular. One is on SDG. I think, the declaration does recognize the fact that we're only 12% done, and we need to have much more significant financing into SDG. I know, Karan, you're there, and UNDP is playing a critical role, but it has implications for India and also for the Global South. And I'm glad that we are focusing on that. The next area that really I want to call out is healthcare. We don't talk enough about it. I think in the last, especially because of pandemic, we've had 2 platforms that India has developed, whether it is including COVID. I think the Global Digital Health Initiative, which is going to be spearheaded by WHO, but India will play a very critical role. Equally important, I think, in healthcare is the fact that One Health and the fact that climate and health has been brought together. I do believe these are foundational changes to the way G20 is going to work, and in fact, the global economy has to react to. Again, India will play a very important role. And finally, if I can bring in the third point, I think as part of the New Delhi G20 presidency, we're also talking about the action plan for lifestyle for sustainable development. I think it is extremely important because end of the day, climate and climate change is center of all discussion. And again, this is something that India's contribution to the entire conversation in the global economic conversation.
All right, Karanraj, to take that forward, sustainable development goals, of course, that's been one of the big, talk points here as well, climate action, climate financing, and the clean energy push, Karanraj, if you could tell us about the significance of that. Now, India's announced a global, biofuel alliance, with the US and Brazil as founding members. How significant is that going to be?
Thanks, Ritu. I think in the, just starting out with putting it in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals and where we are at, as you know, we're at the halfway point of the SDG agenda this year with 12 of 169 targets that are currently on track. A focus of the presidency in the context of the Sustainable Development Goals has also been around just energy transitions. It's been in the context of climate change and climate finance. And I think in that lens, the Global Biofuel Alliance assumes a sort of greater significance. Because here what we're really looking to do is create, together with Brazil and the US, encourage biofuel trade, develop concrete policies, provide capacity building support, and also promote technical assistance for national biofuel programming worldwide. And I think the idea there is essentially around how do we sort of transition from a pure fossil fuel-based economy to one that is becoming, embracing biofuels, embracing hydrogen, and so on.
Okay, we'll continue that conversation, but before that, if we could get you excerpts from a conversation that my colleague Parikshit Luthra had with Sigrid Kaag, who's the Finance Minister of Netherlands, who spoke about the Delhi Leaders Declaration. Listen in to what was said.
Well, I was hoping there would be consensus, and everyone, also the invited countries such as the Netherlands, have been working to support, obviously, the process. It was inconceivable for me there would not be consensus in the end, because there would be a sign of inability by the international community, the G20, to come together, to rally around the important issues.
When it comes to the Ukraine-Russia war, if we compare it to the Bali Declaration, certain important phrases such as deploring Russia's war against Ukraine, condemning the war in the strongest possible terms, asking Russia to get out of Ukraine's territory, those words were removed. Was there a sense of dissatisfaction in the EU among Western nations with that?
Well, I think it's very clear to say that obviously we didn't change position. There's sufficient language in the declaration to point to the essentials. And I think the majority of countries have made it very clear that they stick in terms of the intent, language and their policy stance on what was agreed at Bali, but what we also express in the meeting and outside of the meeting. That doesn't change. Same as you will see probably in the margins or at UNGA. A majority of countries are very clear in their condemnations and their reiteration of the importance of the restoration of the territorial integrity of Ukraine.
Right. Were Russia and China isolated in the room? Because we were hearing that they've gone back on the Bali Declaration, they were seeking a dilution, but do you feel that they were isolated at the end of the day?
Well, I think the G20 obviously also spoke on many other issues, but certainly once you remove yourself from the international community by an extreme act of aggression, an illegal invasion of another country, a violation of the territorial integrity, that is de facto isolation.
What do you feel about some of the other measures that the G20 took, especially on sustainable finance, accelerating SDG goals? We've fallen badly off track on SDGs and our sustainability agenda for 2030. Do you think this G20 somehow puts in place the building blocks?
I think it's an important step in a longer process, of course. We've got the goals of 2030, the declaration, the SDGs need to be achieved. There is a significant reversal of gains. At the same time, this declaration again points to the importance of reform of the multilateral development banks. It is clear on the additionality of climate financing required, as well as the declaration around the importance of global public goods. So there are a number of new aspects that we need to continue to work on in the margins of the IMF and World Bank meetings, at the General Assembly. These are all important processes, so I believe this declaration again leads the way in the articulation and the implementation. Words need to be followed by action.
If I were to ask you about one hit from the G20 and one big miss, according to you?
No, I don't look at declarations in that way. I think there's clearly sensitivity around the absence of language around the phasing out of fossil fuels. It's an important one. One needs to keep pushing for that. We need to be clear. And one big hit, I would say, in the underscoring of the importance of additional climate financing and reform of the international financial architecture.
So you feel that phasing out of fossil fuels could have got a stronger wording in the declaration?
No, I'm not going to reiterate all our national positions or what's been gained. I think it's important that we have a consensus document with clarity and a way forward.
The Dutch finance minister there speaking exclusively to CNBC-TV18, hailing the climate financing moves as one of the biggest hits of India's G20 presidency. Karanraj, Rahul and Nilaya, do stay on. We have to take a short break, but we'll be right back on the other side to continue this discussion.
Right, welcome back to our special coverage of the G20. We are joining you from the Bharat Mandapam, the International Media Center, is where I am standing. And just to speak about this media center once again, let's tell you that this is a 30,000 square feet media center that has been created here for the G20. There are more than 2,000 journalists who are moving around here who've come from all over the world to cover the G20 summit, which is now nearing its conclusion. Ambassador Rahul Chhabra continues to be with us. So is Karanraj Chaudri of the UNDP and Nilaya Varma of Primus Partners. Ambassador Chhabra, I were to ask you about multilateral development bank reform. There were reports which had been prepared and submitted before G20 leaders. They've committed themselves to bigger, better MDBs for the future with more financing capabilities, a capital adequacy framework which would instill at least $200 billion of additional funding capacity for MDBs till the next few years. Do you think we have taken some steps forward on MDB reform, which was so essential to be ready for future crises, future pandemics, when it comes to implementation of these reform measures that have been spoken about, that have been endorsed in this report? How will that implementation now take place, Ambassador Chhabra?
That's where the proof of the pudding lies in the eating. I mean, the commitments have been made, hopefully all in good faith. But these commitments, as you recollect, commitments for climate finance, the $100 billion, the famous $100 billion that we never got to see annually. So we hope this doesn't go down that way. So we should be positive and think that this time they're being made in all sincerity. There's no reason to doubt that. So it is a step forward, but really it is now in the nitty-gritty and the implementation of it that we'll have to see. Also, I just wanted to add that this MDB financing or additional financing is just a little bit of what is required. It's not billions of dollars now, as we saw, it's trillions of dollars that's required. And this is, as the World Bank has been saying, is probably to be used as seed capital to galvanize private sector funding and get them on board. So, because that is where actually the initiative will be, and that's where the funds are. But it seems there is some sort of lack of bankable projects that are really not available. So all this entire sort of ecosystem will have to be put in place before we can really start seeing concrete benefits of these sort of announcements.
Okay, we're running out of time. So Nilaya, just a final word. You know, a lot has been achieved through this New Delhi declaration that has now been adopted. Your final thoughts on where India needs to walk the talk. What have been the most impactful, sort of outcomes to come out of this?
I think there are a number of impactful, but I think the timing is perfect. I think, with Brazil taking over the presidency, followed by South Africa, I think we've been able to raise the critical issues for the global South, whether it is in respect of jobs, education, healthcare, SDG financing, cities of the future. I think, we need to build on that. And the fact that Brazil is following up India's presidency, and many of their initiatives or priorities are very well aligned to us. I would also want to highlight a quick point here, which is about the green hydrogen. While we spoke about the biofuels, I think the fact that the Green Hydrogen Innovation Center is going to be part of ISA, and ISA is perhaps the only international organization to be headquartered in India. I think India can play a major role in that space as well. And my final word would be the fact that India has once again reaffirmed its commitment towards climate and climate financing. I think those are very critical areas that we need to take forward in the next couple of years.
Sure. Okay, on that note, Nilaya Varma, Ambassador Chhabra, Karanraj Chaudri and Parikshit, thank you all for joining us here and sharing your thoughts. On that note, it's a goodbye and thank you for watching.